Right, we're on our third lesson of Spring Fashion, Clothed with Crust. These last few weeks have been pretty intense for us teachers. We have 2 half days left at Southland, so I'm like y'all.
It's about another week in a day. 2 days. Depends on how many years. I've lost track. Too long.
We're going to brag. We had 1 half day left. And then a work day, but the next day.
And where are you? In Bridget. Okay. So LISD has 6.5. You have 1 half. Today we had field day, and I don't remember me saying our whole school has 120 kids, maybe. K through 12, and so everybody was out playing in the water and running, and the seniors were just as happy as the kindergartners. So it was really kind of fun. They were really cute. So anyway, so the third lesson, first lesson was about being clothed with crust and how Adam and Eve in the garden had the first promise of Jesus in Genesis 3:15, and then they had the first blood sacrifice in Genesis 3:21. So just 6 verses later, there was a blood sacrifice, and that is how God clothed Adam and Eve, was with the killing of an animal so that he could provide skin as clothes for them. Because on their own, they were doing very badly, trying to cover up their own nakedness. And so God did it for them. Same with us. Galatians 3:26-27 says, "For you are all sons and daughters of God through faith in Jesus Christ. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ." And he is the blood sacrifice that God performs for us on our behalf. The second lesson then, since we are clothed with Christ, we have been given all the tools to be in the right place at the right time, to do the right things for God's right and holy purposes. And so that second lesson came from Esther and 2 Kings 7. All of these people were where they needed to be, both physically and spiritually, so that the will of God could be performed in all circumstances. And, you know, you think about all the things that had to happen to get Esther to that place, all the things that had to happen to get the lepers into their spot, and finally to get them into the mindset of, you know, we're going to die anyway. We've got to take a chance. And so all of those people were where they needed to be. There's nothing that happens that God doesn't know. He has known it for a long, long time. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, whatever happens tonight after church, whatever happens in the next 2 half days, whatever happens in all of the time that we know, God already knows about it. However, it's still all left up to us. It's not a puppet show. He's not directing all of our thoughts and all of our words and all of our decisions. That he already knows what those decisions are going to be. He already knows what those words and thoughts and actions are going to be. When we are clothed in Christ, though, we make better decisions. We still don't make great decisions. When you think about all the decisions you've made today, have all of them been terrific decisions? Have all of them been just the best in the world? No, but we do make better decisions because we know who we are and we know what has been done for us. And so when we're clothed with Christ, we make those better decisions. We see where God is working, and we recognize his presence and his power in everything that we do. We look for those things. The lepers didn't know the prophecy. Elisha had told the man who the king was leaning on his arm, he said, tomorrow things are going to go back to normal. Or to better. It's going to go back to the way it was before. Flour's going to cost this much, and barley's going to cost this much. And nobody believed him. And especially this man, the king's helper, who he said that even if God opens windows in the sky, that's never going to happen. And Elisha said, it is going to happen, but you're not going to be able to partake of it. And he was trampled to death at the gates. And so the lepers didn't know that, though. They didn't hear the prophecy. They didn't know what Elisha had told the king and the man that was his steward. And they went and acted anyway, even without knowing the prophecy. But when they got to the camp and saw that the Arameans had gone, they took all the food, they ate as much as they wanted to, they took the clothes, they took the gold, they took the weapons and hid them, and then they said, we're not doing the right thing. And so they knew they needed to go back to the king and say, this is what we found, this is what we've done, this is what has happened. And the king, who was very inept and very confused in all times in 2 Kings 7, he didn't believe them, but sent the last remaining horses that they hadn't eaten yet in this place. He sent the last remaining horses and said, go find out. And so the next day, everything went back to normal, because when they got to the camp, the Arameans were gone, and they had all their gold, all their food, all their clothes, all their weapons, their tents, everything. They had left them there because they had heard God rattle the sabers. And so those lepers, even though they didn't know that prophecy, even though they didn't know what was going on, they did know right from wrong. And so they were in the right place at the right time to do the right things for God's right name. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. It's a scripture that all Church of Christ people know really well. I remember memorizing it probably in this building when I was a little girl. 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17 says, every scripture is inspired by God and useful for teaching, for reproof, correction, and for training in righteousness, that the person dedicated to God, clothed with Christ, may be capable and equipped for every good work. So not only are you loved and saved and covered, you're also equipped. You're in the right place at the right time with all the tools you need to do all the right things. So because we are properly clothed by God with a blood sacrifice, and because we are in the right place at the right time to do the right things for the right and holy purposes of God, we may begin successively to clothe others. And so if we think through, this will be the third lesson, and it's about clothing others. In Isaiah 61, verses 10 through 11. Isaiah 61, 10 through 11. It says, I will rejoice greatly in the Lord. My soul will be joyful in my God, for he has clothed me with garments of salvation. He has wrapped me with a robe of righteousness. You know how good it feels when you get out of the shower and you're all hot from the shower, but you are cold because the fan is going, and you put your robe on and it just feels so comforting. I don't know if you feel that same way, but I love putting on my robe. He has wrapped me with a robe of righteousness. As a groom puts on a turban, and as a bride adorns herself with jewels, for as the earth produces its sprouts, and as a garden causes the things sown in it to spring up, so the Lord will cause righteousness and praise to spring up before all the nations. Our salvation bears fruit. And so that fruit is the praise and the righteousness that springs up in front of all people. And so when people see us, when they hear us, when they know us, they know Jesus. Proverbs 31 is where our main verse is going to be, and can't do a ladies class without Proverbs 31. You can, but if you'll read, I'm going to start in verse 20. But if you read up above that, it says King Lemuel, which is another name for Solomon. And this is something that his mother taught him. Who is Solomon's mother? Bathsheba. She's the one telling us who the virtuous woman is. Bathsheba. The one who was taking the bath on the roof of her house and seduced King David and bore a son who died, and then Solomon. And you think, we're getting a lot of advice from Bathsheba on how to be a virtuous woman, how to be a good wife. And she is probably as equipped as all the rest of us are. Do you all have a Bathsheba moment in your life? You've all got sin. We've all got sin. I've got sin. You've got sin in our life. We all have a Bathsheba moment. We've all recovered from that, haven't we? Do you think Bathsheba recovered from that? Was she always bad? Or was she just a good person who did a bad thing?
Actually, I kind of wonder if she just followed the king's orders because she had to.
Right. She may have.
I mean, she may not have had any choice in the matter at all. Back then, you know, the king says something, you do it.
Yes, you do. And so there may have been not very much choice in that. And so she was maybe a good person with a bad moment. How many of us are good people with some bad moments in our past? All of us. And so we all have just as much right to say what a virtuous woman is as she does. And so I always think of that. Once I learned that it was Bathsheba who gave him this advice, I thought, well, okay. And she says, who can find this virtuous woman? This person doesn't really exist, but she does. She exists in all of us. And so we're going to start in verse 20 of Proverbs 31. And it says, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days to come. So if we know that we're clothed with Christ, we know we're in the right place at the right time, it's time to move from needing clothing to providing clothing. Okay, and so this woman has provided clothing in 3 respects. First, we start with at home and family. It says, when it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. This virtuous woman sees ahead to the winter, to times of trouble and cold, to distress, to hardship, to all of the things that winter brings. And she dresses her family in response to what is coming. She does what is needed at the time. And so you think about all the things you have done today. They were all things that were needed at that moment. You needed to wash the dishes after breakfast. You needed to make the bed. You needed to get in your car and drive to the next place to do the next thing. The teachers scooped in kids and loved them all day long so that they could go home as kids were loved. We fed them, we nurtured them, we loved them all day long. You did the same at your work. You spoke to people, you wrote a check that somebody needed. You did all of the things, whatever was necessary as the next thing, you did that. You clothed your family in scarlet. You prepared them for the winter. You did whatever was necessary that was right before you, and it blessed your family. And think about all the little tiny things in Zechariah, and I meant to look this up, but I didn't. In Zechariah, and I think it's in chapter 4, but I'm not sure. It says, who despises the day of small things? And the small things that we do every day can't be let go or overlooked, taken for granted. All the things that we do that are tiny and good, bless our family. My friend, Rachel Pruitt, she is married to Bart Pruitt. Some of you might know Bart. And they had 4 little babies, and she just said, I am just not doing all the things I need to do at church. I can't teach Sunday school because I've got these 4 little kids, and I can't, you know, I'm not studying the Bible like I want to. I'm not getting to listen to the preacher when we're in church. I'm not getting to do the things I want to do. And he looked at her, you know, Bart, this is kind of out of character for Bart. But Bart told her, he said, every time you mop the floor, you're doing something good that blesses people. It blesses me, it blesses our children. And that is comforting. And that was sweet of him to say to her at that moment. And it had to be inspired to come from Bart. If you know Bart, that's not usually his temperament. But he was so sweet to say that. And I remembered that ever since she told me that, because her kids were little, and her kids are now 30 and down to 25-ish, I guess. You know, and I've remembered that for 30 years, all of those things. You can't despise the day of small things. An old quote that rings true every time is, the most important work that you or I will ever do will be within the walls of our own homes. You think about all the things you do within the walls of your own home that bless many people, many, many people. Every time you kiss that little boo-boo on a knee, every time you mop the floor, like Bart said, or every time you do any little thing that blesses your family, that is kingdom work. An old quote that President Lincoln said was, all that I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother. You just think we're all angel mothers. Whether we have children of our own or not, you mother people. And that is a good work. We want our families to be dressed in the blood of Christ, the scarlet that matters, the crimson that matters. And for that to happen, we need to spend a lot of time and energy toward that purpose. It means, and I know I can say this in here because you're here, it means coming to class on Wednesday nights, even when baseball season is underway. It means giving up some things that your kids really want to do. It means that we spend more time reading and memorizing scripture than we spend learning song lyrics or Harry Potter or Star Wars plots. Mm-hmm. I wanted my kids to know the stories in the Bible more than I wanted them to know those things. I read them Harry Potter because I loved it. Mm-hmm. But I've just read it with my seniors in high school. It's the last part of British literature. And we had a lot of fun with it. But I wanted them to know the Bible more than they knew that. I wanted them to be able to sing more church songs than radio songs. It means dressing reverently for reverent occasions. It's easier to do when our children are little, not as easy to do when they're older, I think. Maybe you have a different experience, but I think that spending a lot of that time and energy when our kids are little is not as easy as, or not as hard as it is when they're teenagers and even older. But luckily, those big kids bring home more little kids. And so I've got 3 new little grandbabies, all under 2 right now. And so it means purposefully grandmothering, intentionally being the favorite aunt, Going to your next door neighbor and taking her kids for the afternoon sometimes. There were some ladies at church when we lived in Olney, and they would just say, Trent and Randall are coming home with us this afternoon. You go take a nap. Oh, my goodness. It was beautiful. It was the best afternoon. When they would come and do that, it means teaching VBS in Sunday school classes for your own children, but also for the other children that come in. It means being present, and it means putting people in your path. Did you ever guide people into your children's path? So that, because when they weren't listening to you, you knew that they needed someone else to listen to. And so you made sure that they had those other people. You guided them in the right direction. And then you had to stick to it when it became their obsession. My parents sent me to Camp Blue Haven. I did not know a soul who was at Camp Blue Haven. And I showed up and I walked into camp and I thought, I'm here all by myself. I don't know anybody. And my dad said, well, Marcy Davis is one of my kids in class, and I know she'll be good, and so you just look for her. And they signed me up, and they drove away. I thought, well, this is sink or swim time.
How old were you?
I was 14, so I wasn't a baby. Kent went when he was a little bit too little.
I did too. I was very homesick.
He was very homesick. I was not homesick. And it became an obsession to me. I remember coming off the bus on the way, after 2 weeks being there, I got off the bus and the first thing I said was, I'm going back next year, and the next, and the next, and the next. Mm-hmm. And it became sort of an obsession with me. And so you kind of hope that's what your kids do. I remember taking my kids the first time to camp. And the first time I saw Hermit's Peak, they say that I cried. I don't think I did. But maybe I did a little.
You actually hiked Hermit's Peak?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I've been up there.
Wow.
It was a very long time ago. But just as a disclaimer, we also need to remember that people in our family have free will. And even if we do everything we can possibly do, each of us has free will. And sometimes the lessons don't stick. And sometimes we have to suffer through a lot of disappointment. But it's not because we didn't prepare them well. It's not because we didn't tell the stories. It's not because we said we read Harry Potter instead of Genesis tonight. Let us not be discouraged over that. Let us have the courage to keep teaching, to keep prompting toward salvation, to keep guiding people into their path, to keep on going. Whether or not the seed grows, I cast the seed. The sower of the seed that was his only job. It wasn't to do anything else. Fortunately, though, when it's your own family in your own home, you also have a little bit of say in how the soil is prepared. You can keep it a little more watered and a little more raked and a little more dug up, and a little more fertilized than you can when you're just outside casting seed. Okay, within your own home, you do get to prepare the soil a little bit more. So that first, we're going to start with our family. She clothed her family in scarlet for the winter. Second, she provides for herself her own clothes of linen and fine linen and purple, and her own household, which at that time would have probably included people who worked for her as servants or slaves even. And so her whole household was taken care of. Her husband was taken care of. Her children were taken care of. All the people who worked for her would be taken care of. I thought it was interesting. Let me read back again at that verse. She makes coverings for her bed. She dresses her bed well. And you think, what are the things you make at your house? What do you like to make? For your house. What do you like to do? Little crafts that you like to do. You like to do things at your house? No. I'm always making something, and I get on these kicks. Right now I'm learning to crochet, but I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos to do it. My mom tried to teach me and I just didn't learn. I was always wanting to run out the front door and go play football down the street. And I've gotten into making pillowcases lately. They are really fun to make.
Simple.
Yes, and very simple. There's this one little tricky one you make where you roll it all up and you sew one seam and then you right side it out and voila, it's okay.
I think I have that.
It makes me happy. And if you've made those before, you know they're really kind of fun to make. And then you have some sides, but they're amazing. And I may have to bring a whole bunch and give them away because I'm having too much fun. I love to paint. I have a big map in my bedroom. I bet most people don't have a map hanging on their wall. It is a 4-foot by 5-foot map of the United States. And I have stuck pins from everywhere that we've gone. I love to make things. Okay, so now that I'm saying the things I like to make, you thought of things you like to make at your house? I mean, just little things, little things. No?
I'm making a quilt.
Sometimes.
Cross stitch.
Yeah, kind of a stress reliever.
Yes. And that's what I thought about crocheting. It's just so not well. The kind that I do is very monotonous, and you don't have to think or count very much. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's kind of easy, but you can just sink into your chair when you do that.
I've quilted before.
Quilted.
I'm working on one now that I've been working on for 3 years.
And it doesn't matter how long it takes. It's like
you pick it up and do it.
I know, you just do a little bit. I said I was going to make 1 granny square per day. So far, I've done that in the last 2 weeks. It's going to take quite a while to make a whole lot.
My Carla, you remember Carla, my sister, she is a big Pinterest person.
Oh, me too.
She looks at that all the time, and she always creates something from Pinterest.
And have you seen the Pinterest fails? People tried to decorate a cake.
Yeah.
I like a lot of color in my house. I did not know that until we moved into this new house. I put some very bright hot pink pillows on the couch, and I did not know that would make me so happy. It made me, I don't know, it's just a color my life was needing. I don't know why. Maybe because I have raised boys and played with the football team the whole time. I don't know. Third thing here is at the beginning of the set of verses that I read, and I'll read them again just to make sure we know where we are here. Let's go to there's the page. All right, so Proverbs 31:20-25. She opens her arms to the poor. She extends her hands to the needy. When it sows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, for he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. So the third thing I want to talk about is the poor and needy, but also the other people. Because we talk about giving things, providing things, helping the poor and needy a lot. The first of the verse begins with the poor and needy, but then at the ends of the verses, it extends toward the merchants and the people of the town, the community at large. She is helping those people. James 1:27 says, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained by the world. And so the orphans and the widows need our help, and they need our attention, and they need anything that we can supply and provide for them. But it doesn't end there, is what I want to say. I'm not trying to minimize the poor and the needy, but I'm just going to say that it doesn't end there. We aren't only to go to the poor and needy. The harvest is to be found among the merchants and the other citizens in our towns and cities, of our community, the people in our community. It is to be found no matter where we go. In Matthew 5:41, the soldiers among them would make them carry a burden for a mile. And Jesus said, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. What an influence you would be on somebody if they were asking you to do something and you did more. What a witness that is to what you believe and what you practice and to what you hope to be if you do more than what is required or more than what is asked of you. I hadn't thought of this before, and maybe I haven't. Whenever I say something that's a brand new thought, I'm always scared to say it because I think, well, maybe I haven't thought it through all the way. But this afternoon, while I was working on this, I had this new thought about maybe that's what it means to have a servant heart. The humble servant, the one who is providing the service, isn't serving the poor and needy. A servant heart is someone who even serves those who are superior to them in some aspect. Ones with more money, ones with more stuff. I don't think stuff or money make you rich, but some people do. And so to look around and see the ones who need help doesn't mean just only the poor and needy. I think we need to start there, but I also think we need to keep going. The only football player we have ever had who was stabbed and almost killed by his stepfather or his mom's boyfriend, I don't know how that really happened. He was a boy who lived in Frisco in a $400,000 home and should have been one that we didn't worry about. But we still had to worry about him. Hearts hurt in every house on your block. Think about that. There are hurt hearts in every house on your block. So look around. A servant heart may mean that you need to look and see. The virtuous woman then, I kind of am boiling down all of these verses into one idea that she sees need. She sees what her kids need, her household needs when it's snowy and cold, and she dresses them accordingly. And she dresses them well. She sees what her home needs and dresses it well. She sees what the merchants need. They need sashes. If they need sashes to sell, then I'll make sashes. There's a field I can buy and begin a vineyard. She did that in the other verses. She bought a field and began a vineyard. What did that mean? She had to employ people. She had to bring people in to work. She's making sure that they're making money. And I know this is really bad of me, but that was the way I justified having a housekeeper one time. Is I thought, well, I'm paying. I'm employing her. I'm doing a good service to her. She was really doing a better service for me. But if there's a field I can buy and begin a vineyard, I'll buy it and employ people. I'll make money for our family any way I can so that I can be a blessing to those who need my skill, my craft, my art, my work, whatever it is that I do for a living. There are people that need me. And think about the things you do for a living. There are people who need you at that place and at that time, and you are right there to do the right thing. We spend a lot of time listening to people tell us to learn to say no. That's been kind of a thing for the last few years, is like, you just need to learn how to say no. You just need to learn how to draw boundaries. You just need to define your limits. I'm going to ask you to say yes. I think this woman in these verses of Proverbs 31 says yes a lot. hey, there's a field over there. Should I buy it? Yes, I should buy it. There are clothes needed. The merchants need some sashes. Could I make money from that? Yes, I could. So why don't I make some sashes? She saw the need. She saw things that needed to be done, and then she said yes. And so that's kind of a theme, I think, that goes through there. This woman seems to me to be one who says yes rather than no to things. Can we get too busy? Yes, you can get too busy. I can get very busy. I love my finger in every pie. As you can see, I like making a lot of different things. I also like being on committees. I like being in, I remember when we lived in Albany, I was on the Chamber of Commerce board. I was a ring mother or something. And finally, Randall was old enough to go to school. And I asked him, I said, do you think I should get a job? And he said, yes, you need to be paid for all these things that you're doing now. I was like, oh, well, okay. But you can get too busy. You can get too stressed. And you do need to draw your boundaries and define your limits. But leave room for saying yes. Naomi Nye is a poet who lives in Texas and in San Antonio. She's really a fun, good person. I'm a super nerd, and I go to a poetry festival in Round Top, Texas, usually in non-COVID times. And she's usually there, and she'll just plop down beside you at breakfast and, what's going on in your life? You're Naomi Nye, you're a really famous poet. But she says, say yes to things. She said, what else are you doing? Otherwise, you're just going to watch TV. And you think about how much time we spend in front of the TV, that we could be saying yes to really fun things. And this is one fun thing that she just decided to do. I'll tell you what she did. She looked in the phone book in San Antonio and found everyone with her last name, Nye, N-Y-E. And she wrote them all an invitation and invited them to dinner. She did not know them. Wow. And she said, more than half of them came. They all said yes. And that was two sides of the yes coin that I want you to look at. Be the one who invites. Be the one that says, I don't think I'm going to invite everybody with last name over for dinner. And be the one that when you get that invitation, you say, you can go to Naomi Nye's house. And maybe they knew who she was. I don't know if they knew she was a famous poet. But she's just really cool like that. And she knows when to say yes. But she says, always leave room for a yes. Do you need me to make a pie for a funeral? Yes, I can do that. If somebody calls you, say, yes, I can. You can buy a pie. You can get your daughter to make a pie. You can get somebody to make a pie. I can make a pie. Do you need me to watch your kids while you take a nap? Yes. Do you need me to help you write a resume? Sure, I'll do that. Do you need me to edit some pictures for a slideshow? Yes. That happened this week to me, and that's why I wrote it down, was the elementary teachers were in a fizz because they couldn't get their slideshow done. And I said, well, I have all the pictures. I've taken 7,000 this year. So let me throw a few in. Pretty soon I was arranging things that they had already done. Throwing in some music and all sorts of things. What do you like to do? Do that. What do you see to do? Do that. How can you bless others? You are saved. You're in the right place at the right time to do the right things for God's right and holy purposes. And you can say yes to the things right around you that need to be done because you are equipped for that. And so that's where I'm going to leave this week's lesson.
That was awesome.
All right, so prayer requests. I didn't know that Joe and Jackie Humphrey had first membership. Are they? I mean, you said Jackie Humphrey was in the hospital. They went through a very, very, very long time ago. Anybody else? I probably don't have a pen because I never have anything useful in my purse. I just have, I don't know what I have in here. Thank you. Okay, so if you have somebody that we need to pray for, we think.
Does anybody know about the baby that has seizure?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't heard anything else.
From what I heard, they don't know what it was. I think it was just a fluke. So then, from last I heard, they didn't know what caused it. But he's better.
What was the name?
That was the
Hershey. What is it for them?
Prayers of Thanksgiving for my dad.
Yeah.
Roy, he's doing much better. Okay, well.
Prayer of thanks for Ella's teacher. She came through her surgery and they did not have to amputate her foot. So that was good.
Sound like a pig over here.
No.
This is on the announcements, but my uncle Roger, Doug's brother, and Aunt Leah and my mom's sister, both fighting cancer. Not looking good for my dad's brother. I think they might have found brain cancer at this point. He's got slurred speech from his stroke. Luckily, that's the only thing that has been affected with him right now. But he's home, thankfully, but not.
So what is their last name?
Hannah.
Okay. It's Roger and Mike.
Leah is my mom's sister. Her last name's Williams.
Okay.
Yeah, so both sides of the family are having to deal with it.
Let's pray. Holy Father in heaven, thank you so much for the rain, especially, and for the storms, and for the goodness that you bring to the earth with the clouds and the sky and the moisture and the humidity. And just we really thank you for all of that has come our way this week. We know that sometimes those clouds can be scary and they are dangerous some, but we love the beauty of it and the nourishment that it gives the land. We pray a lot of thanks tonight for Griffin Hershey and for Roy and for Ella's teacher, that they have gotten some good reports or that they have gotten better. We think it's good that when we don't know what causes seizures, just because it's something that, if it was just a fluke, then we know that that's something that everybody can live with. We know that that's a scary time for parents, though, and they're going to be extra watchful and just scared. Thank you for Ella's teacher not having to have the amputation. Please be with Jackie Humphrey as she's in the hospital, and Roger with his cancer, and Leo with hers. We know that cancer and just old age just are not a easy time in life. We know that those times are scary and hard, and just we pray for your will to be done in all those cases. We know that you know the future, that you know what's happening, that you know what will happen, and we trust you. We lean on you and we trust you and we hope for the best, and we want to see the need, and we want to do what's right and good for you. Help us to know where that is and give us the courage and the boldness to do it. Thank you for these women who meet together every Wednesday night, and for the time that we have to share and learn about your word and think about you and meditate on the things we know about you already, but also things that we want to know more about. Thank you for all the hearts in this room that want to be part of your plan and part of your future, and the ones who are working so hard to bring others in. Thank you for blessing us and for giving us Jesus, who heals everything. Thank you for the blood that was shed on the cross so that we might have eternal salvation. Be with us as we go our own ways this evening and help us through our week. Be with the teachers during that final week of school that is so crazy and just pretty intense with all the things we have to do and get done and clean up and all of that. Help us to always see why we're there and to bless the kids as long as we have them in our care, and then help us to pray for them and look for need during the summer as well. Thank you for loving us and blessing us in Jesus' name.